We're fortunate today to have Courtney Anclam with us this morning. Courtney is a senior program specialist with AARP Wisconsin. She manages AARP Wisconsin's Fraud Watch Network, which focuses on outreach and education around frauds and scams. As part of her role, she collaborates with other fraud fighting organizations like the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, the Better Business Bureau, and the Federal Trade Commission. Courtney's workshop today is titled The Con Artist Playbook. Welcome, Courtney. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks so much for the introduction, and thank you, of course, to RSVP and Triad for organizing this great conference. Really excited to be talking to you all today. And just in case you are just joining now for my presentation, I do want to say Tiffany from the BBB just presented before me, and her presentation had a lot of great information about how to avoid fraud and scams online. So I have kind of removed some of that stuff from my presentation, so I might just touch on it lightly and just know you can go back to her presentation later to learn more about that stuff. And just as a heads up, I do have a dog, and we live in an apartment building, and he loves to alert me whenever doors open and close in the hall. So if you hear him barking, I apologize in advance. And one last thing before I get started, I know that I talk really quickly, so I apologize in advance for that as well, but I do have handouts that I have made available for you. You can find my slides and some handouts that we would usually use if we were doing this in person. So those are going to cover a lot of the information I'm going to talk about today. So like Kelly mentioned, I'm here with AARP Wisconsin, and you might know AARP for our insurance or our discounts. You might even know us for our advocacy, but AARP is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. And we also have this Fraud Watch Network program, which is focused on outreach and education about fraud and scams. So in pre-pandemic times, we would go out and do events, and we have volunteers who would present in their communities. And now we're really excited to be doing virtual stuff like this just to get the word out. So just to give you guys kind of a look at what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about some common scams. I'm going to go through what we call the con artist playbook, which is like just a really fun way to talk about kind of the tactics that scammers will use. And then, of course, we're going to talk about prevention strategies, and we're going to go over some resources for you guys. So before I get started, I do just want to throw like kind of a disclaimer out there. I know I'm here with AARP Wisconsin, and a lot of the times we are representing older adults, but literally anyone can be scammed. And you know, we see young people get scammed, we see old people get scammed, and it's just really important to keep that in mind, that this is a con artist's job, is to try to get people to give up their personal information or money, and it can literally happen to anyone. It's just that we see fraud affects different generations differently. So to talk a little bit more about that, I have the next two slides are the most data that I'm going to share. I know data is not everyone's favorite thing, but this data is from the Federal Trade Commission's Consumer Sentinel Network, and this is from last year, but a lot of it still really applies. And this data is showing us, it's broken out on the left. You can see different age groups, so starting at 20 to 29 and then going to 80 and over. And what we're looking at on the left set of bars is a medium dollar loss. And you can see that older people tend to lose more money, which if we think about it, makes sense because they've had longer lives to save, and they might have retirement accounts and things like that that they can pull from. But if we look at the bars on the right, we can see fraud reports per 100,000 population. So that's just like the number of reports, right? And on that side, we can see that actually the trend kind of goes down as people get older. So together what this data is showing us is that older people actually report scams less often, but when they are reporting dollar losses, they're losing a lot more money. So this just goes to show us that younger people really need this information too. So if you find yourself saying, oh, I know this, just make sure you're talking about this kind of stuff with your friends and family and neighbors who are older than you, younger than you, even your peers. And then just a little bit more data here, and then I promise I'll be done. On the top, we have people aged 20 to 29, and that second bar is people 80 and over. And again, this is from the Federal Trade Commission's data. And this is kind of just showing us differences in the kinds of scams that people are typically reporting. So with younger demographics, we're seeing more online shopping and counterfeit check scams, versus older populations have more tech support scams, the imposter scams where they pretend to be a family or a friend, which I will talk about in more detail a little bit later. We see those more with older populations, but you will notice that imposter scams for government and business are really popular for both the younger demographic and the older demographic. And then we can also look at differences in payment and contact method. So younger people are sending more wire transfers versus older people sending more gift cards. So this is usually the part where I will say, if you're asked by a government agency to pay a debt by gift card, just know that that's a scam. Anytime is someone is asking you to pay by gift card, that's a really big red flag. And then of course, contact method, we see that phone is really popular across both of those age groups, which I'm sure a lot of people have been experiencing now that a lot of us are working more from home, and those calls have really been increasing. So all of that to say, anyone can be scammed. It just happens differently across different age groups. So with that, I would like to move into talking about some common scams to keep an eye out for. So I briefly mentioned previously imposter scams. So this is any scam where somebody pretends to be someone that they're not in order to get someone to give up personally identifying information or money. And these types of scams were the top reported scam to the Federal Trade Commission in 2019. It's kind of an umbrella term. I'm going to talk a little bit more about different variations on it next, but just as a primer for that, general rule for imposter scams is don't answer your phone, which I know sounds like really curmudgeon-y, and it's really hard for some of us who are, used to answering the phone, especially older populations. Like, it's just polite to answer your phone. And then if you do answer and you're kind of like, this is a little bit fishy, just hang up right away, which again is kind of hard. I understand for those of us who are Midwest nice in Wisconsin, we don't want to just hang up on people. But you need to remember that scammers are trying to get something from you and you don't owe them your time. So don't be afraid to hang up. And just a note that you can't really trust your caller ID. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about spoofing, which is a strategy that scammers can use to make it look like they're calling from a legitimate business number. So your caller ID might say Social Security Administration, and it might have, like a Washington, D.C. area code, and you might say, oh, maybe that really is Social Security calling me. So just know caller ID can be fooled, and it's not, you can't always trust it. So when we talk about imposter scams, some of the really common ones are, like I mentioned, the Social Security Administration. So you might get a call and they'll say, oh, there's something wrong with your Social Security number. We're going to have to discontinue it unless you send us $1,000 in like iTunes gift cards. Or they might even just say, we need you to verify your information. Can you give us your Social Security number? And like I mentioned before, if they're asking you for payment by gift card, that's a red flag. Just hang up for sure. And just remember, if the Social Security Administration is calling you, they should have your Social Security number. You shouldn't have to confirm that for them. So just anytime somebody's asking for personally identifying information like that, hang up and call them back at a number that you know belongs to the Social Security Administration. Another really common one that we see is the IRS. So with this one, usually you'll get like a phone call that says, this is the IRS, you owe us thousands of dollars. Again, send us a gift card or wire transfer or something along those lines, but they're going to be asking for money from you. And with these, they might even say, if you don't pay, we're going to arrest you, you're going to go to jail if you don't pay us. They really kind of lean a little bit more on that fear and intimidation. And these are scary because like we're trained to trust the IRS. And if somebody says they're from the IRS, like we want to believe them. And we really don't want to be in trouble with the IRS. We don't want to owe them money. So it makes sense that people will do whatever they need to kind of take care of that problem. But again, the IRS isn't going to call you. If there is an issue, they will send you a letter first. And if somebody calls and threatens to arrest you because you owe money to the IRS, I know it's hard and it's scary, but just hang up. And then again, contact the IRS yourself and confirm if there is some kind of issue and what you need to do to rectify that. Another common one is what we call the grandparent scam, which is they don't necessarily need to be pretending to be your granddaughter. They could pretend to be anyone from your family. But the way this one works is a scammer will call you and they'll say, "Oh, grandma, it's me, Courtney. I've been traveling in Brazil and I got in trouble and I got arrested and I need you to send me $1,000. You can wire it to me. Oh, and please don't tell mom and dad, like I don't want to get in trouble over this." And so the way this one works is if you are a grandparent and your grandchild is calling you saying they're in trouble and they're in jail, of course you want to help them. Like you don't want them to be in jail in Brazil. So you want to send money. But the thing is, it's almost never actually your grandchild calling. So with these, again, kind of feel like I'm like beating a dead horse, but really you just need to hang up on these people. Or if you don't want to hang up because you're worried that it really is your grandchild, ask them a question that you think only they would be able to answer. So something like, what was the name of your first pet? Or something like that. Something that scammers wouldn't be able to really guess easily. And if you do need to hang up, that's totally fine. And then call your grandchild back at the phone number that you know is theirs and say, "Hey, are you traveling in Brazil?" And if you can't get a hold of your grandchild, try getting a hold of someone else in the family to see if you can confirm the story that the scammer was trying to tell you. And again, this one plays on fear and intimidation. We all want to make sure our family members are safe and happy and not in Brazilian jail. So this one totally makes sense, but again, just make sure that it's actually who you're talking to. And another prevention strategy for this one is keeping your social media accounts and your profiles private, because scammers can pull information from your account. So if you're always posting publicly on your Facebook about how much you love your granddaughters, Courtney, Caitlin, and you love your grandson, Brian, and you're always posting that, it's really easy for scammers to find that information. And again, I will just plug Tiffany's presentation again really quickly because she talked a lot about online safety and how to prevent that kind of stuff. In the time of coronavirus, we have seen some different kinds of scams skyrocketing because scammers are really good at following headlines. So the pandemic has been a great time for them. So one thing that we have seen an increase in is fake testing kits and treatments and cures. So they might call, but it could also be a text message, a social media message, an email. They reach out all kinds of different ways and they say, you know, we have this great coronavirus testing kit. You just have to pay $500 or whatever to get it, and then you pay them, and then you never get a testing kit, or you get something that doesn't really work. The same thing with treatments and cures. When that kind of stuff becomes available, like you're not going to hear about it from a Facebook message. You're going to hear about that from trusted sources of information like the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. So just make sure when it comes to that kind of healthcare related stuff that you're really keeping up, like I said, with trusted sources of information. We've also seen an increase of charity scams. So the pandemic has been hard on a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And anytime there's some kind of tragedy or issue like the pandemic, we also see it around hurricanes and natural disasters. Scammers take advantage of people's kind of natural desire to help their neighbors. And they really will reach out and they'll say, hey, it's Courtney. I'm with, I'm with the Coronavirus Relief Foundation, and we're collecting money to send to people who have lost their jobs, something like that. And like I said, as people, we naturally want to help out those in need, and so we want to give money to that kind of cause. But the thing is, these scammers are taking that money and they're keeping it for themselves, or they're buying themselves luxury cars. They're doing whatever they want with that money. They're not giving it to people in need. So if during the pandemic or any time, especially with the holiday season coming up, these will continue to be pervasive. Just make sure you're doing research about any charities you want to give money to. And one really easy way to do that is look them up on a website like charitynavigator.org, something like that. Just make sure that you're looking into charities before you send them any money. And another interesting scam that we've seen arise in around COVID has been pet scams. So with a lot more people working from home, it seems like a great time to be getting pets, which maybe it is. So with these, the way it works is they'll set up like a fake website and there'll be pictures of these adorable dogs, and people will say, I want that dog in my life right now. And they'll pay for it without actually seeing or meeting the dog. And then the scammers will say, oh yes, well, we'll transport it to you. But then what happens is there's an issue with the transport, or they figured out the dog needs vaccinations, and they keep coming up with excuses for you to continue to send them money even after you've paid them an adoption fee or a purchase price or whatever. They'll keep coming up with reasons for you to have to send money. And because you've already invested in this dog and you're in love with this dog just from the pictures, you'll send whatever money it takes for you to get that dog. And the truth is, it's never going to come. So if you are thinking about adopting a dog or getting a dog or any kind of pet during the pandemic, or any time for that matter, you want to go, if you're looking to rescue from somewhere local where you can go and meet the dog and see the dog or cat or pet and make sure that that animal actually exists. And you, of course, want to make sure that they're giving you healthy animals too. So with pet scams, just avoid purchasing pets online. And again, make sure you're going local so that you can go and meet that pet before you purchase it. So those are some kind of common scams. I know I went through them kind of quickly. Again, there's going to be time for questions at the end. So if you have anything, feel free to ask, and then we'll get to it kind of at the end of the presentation. Next, I would like to talk about, like I said, we call it the Con Artist Playbook, which is strategies that scammers use against consumers. So if you ask any scammer, what is the secret to conning someone, they'll say it's getting them under the ether, which is just kind of like a fancy way to say getting them into a heightened emotional state. So when we're really anxious or really excited or nervous about something, we kind of stop thinking logically about what's happening and just act on impulse. And so that is what they want to do. They want to get you in that heightened emotional state so that you're not thinking and you're just doing. And they've got some kind of tried and true tactics for getting you into that emotional state. And I'm going to go through each one of these kind of individually with some examples. So the first one is phantom riches. So phantom riches is the promise of something that you want but probably aren't ever actually going to get. So the examples here on the screen are, the grand prize is $25,000 in cold hard cash. That sounds amazing. Like, you hear $25,000 and the first thing your brain does is, what can I do with $25,000? Like, I could, renovate my kitchen, I could like update my wardrobe, I could, adopt like at least 100 dogs with $25,000. So again, you immediately start thinking about all of that money, and it's so exciting, and you don't think about like, well, what do I have to do to get that money? Another example is, the lottery is up to $30 million, and if you join our club, you get 48,000 tickets. That's, sorry, 4,800, I can read today. 4,800 chances to win. And again, that sounds really, really exciting. Like 4,800, that's a lot of chances to win. And at the end of that, there's $30 million. Like that's super exciting. And again, you're thinking about like what all of that money can do for you without thinking about who's asking you for information, what kind of information you have to give them, stuff like that. Another strategy that they use is profiling. So this is they'll ask questions and try to get to know you so that they can figure out how better to manipulate you to get information from you. So earlier I mentioned that the scammer's job is literally to get information and money from you. So they're really good at this. And sometimes what they'll do is when they call, they're super friendly, they have, pleasant conversation with you and build up a rapport. And this is really common too. I know Tiffany talked a lot about romance scams, which is a kind of imposter scam. They are friendly and they build a relationship with you so that later when they ask you for something, you're more willing to give it to them. So one of the examples here is let me ask you something. It sounds like you have a wonderful home there. How much is that mortgage each month? So, this is like after you've been talking to them for a little bit and they say, oh, it sounds like you have a wonderful home, and they're complimentary about it. And then they ask, how much is your mortgage? And maybe you don't really think about it because they've been so friendly and you tell them, oh yeah, my mortgage is $1,000. Like, seems kind of like innocuous information, but then they know that you have $1,000 set aside every month for your house payment. They have an idea of how much money they can get from you. So just be really careful about the kinds of information that you're giving people and what kinds of questions they're asking you. Another strategy is scarcity. So this kind of taps into our psychological need to not miss out on things. And an example here is there are only 24 hours left before this offer will expire, so you have to act now. And that puts you under this pressure of, oh my gosh, only 24 hours, like I want this, so I have to do it right now because you don't want to miss out. And this is a strategy that we see scammers use, but it's also something that you can see legitimate businesses doing all of the time. So when Kohl's has like a flash sale on KitchenAid mixers, they're employing the strategy of scarcity of like, you only have 24 hours to take advantage of this sale, so do it right now. So recognizing this kind of strategy, when legitimate businesses are doing it is helpful for you then if you ever run into a scammer who is trying to use that. You can say, oh, I didn't fall for it when Kohl's tried it, so I'm not going to fall for it when this scammer does it. And another tactic that they use is source credibility, which is kind of relying on titles and certifications to get you to believe them. And usually those titles and certifications are totally fake. So all of those imposter scams that we talked about rely on source credibility, where they're saying, I'm from Apple, and immediately you're like, cool, I trust Apple. And then you're more willing to give them information. So the example here on the screen is I'm a senior vice president, I have an MBA, and I'm certified to deal with seniors. Like, I believe this is the right product for you. And if I heard that, oh, you have an MBA, I trust you. I don't have an MBA, I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, why wouldn't I trust someone with that degree? So just be careful when people say those kinds of things, and just be aware that anyone can say literally anything over the phone. And you're going to want to try your best to kind of verify that before you give them any information or money. And the last tactic that I have listed here is fear and intimidation, which is pretty self-explanatory. They just try to get you to be scared so that you're not thinking and you're just doing. And this is, like I mentioned with the grandparent scam, that's a common strategy that they use. Also with the IRS stuff, where they say, we're going to arrest you. And this quote I have on the screen is from an interview that we did with some like different scammers, and it says, once I get a hold of a victim, I would never let go. Even when they told me they were out of money, I would never let go. Go borrow the money. So even if you're trying your best and you're saying, I'm not going to send you money, I don't even have that money, the scammer is going to say, go and get it. Like, I don't care if you don't have it, go borrow it from someone if you need to. And they're going to get really mean about it. So this one is really unfortunate, and we do see this happen a lot. So those are all pretty awful. So we're going to talk a little bit now about prevention strategies and how you can avoid getting into these kinds of situations. So con artists agree that targets are easily excited. They don't think about why something might be a scam. They don't ask questions, and they don't read information. So what you can do is like the exact opposite of all of those things. So don't make any buying decisions when you're in a heightened emotional state. So, if you feel yourself getting really excited or nervous or anxious, just take time, hit the brakes, back away. Don't make a decision right then and there. Just take time to think it through. Ask more questions than you answer. And this is something that we talk about a lot with like charity scams or anytime that you're sending money, to just ask questions. Like, what are you going to do with this money? Who is like the executive director of your nonprofit? Where are you guys located? Stuff like that. Be sure you're asking more than you're answering. Read about a product before you buy it. And again, I know Tiffany talked a lot about this in her presentation. You can Google companies, you can look them up on the BBB website. If there is like a salesperson coming door to door, which usually happens with stuff like home repair kinds of scams, if they hand you something, actually read it. And if you do Google a company, like actually read the reviews. And this also goes for if you're signing things, just make sure that you're really reading the fine print. Don't let a salesperson control you. And then finally, develop a refusal script. So this goes back to, I recognize that a lot of us are Midwest nice. We're raised to be polite. We don't want to hang up on people. We don't want to say no. We don't want to interrupt them. So having a refusal script that you can lean on is super helpful. So an example would be if you get called and it's somebody saying that they want to collect money for their nonprofit over the phone, you can just say, I'm sorry, I don't give money over the phone. Where can I find more information about your company? And if they don't want to give you more information, just hang up. But that, I'm sorry, I don't give money over the phone, is your refusal script. And having something that you can lean on is really great, because then you can kind of get out of those situations quickly before you find yourself in trouble. And then I have some more tips for you guys, which is probably a lot of stuff that you guys are doing already. So I will just reiterate the idea that if you find yourself saying, I already do all of this, I already know all of this, make sure you're sharing information with your friends and family and neighbors and that they're doing this stuff too. So protect your personal information. And that means online and offline too. So if you have Facebook, if you have Instagram or Twitter or whatever you're using online, make sure that those profiles are set to private so that only your friends can see that information. And when we talk about protecting your information offline, when you get a physical bill statement or you get an account summary from your healthcare provider, stuff like that, like you don't want to leave those papers just laying around anywhere where anyone can see them. Make sure they're in a drawer that you can secure. And if it's stuff that you don't need anymore, shred it before you throw it out. Don't just recycle it, because if somebody gets a hold of that, all of your information is right there. Monitor your bills and financial accounts. So that my advice is to set up online access to your accounts so that you can check on them anytime you want. And if you do have online access, again, check it regularly. Make sure that everything looks okay. And I understand that not everyone wants to have online access for their accounts, and that's totally fine too. If you're getting paper statements, make sure you're looking at that paper statement when you get it in the mail and you're not just throwing it out. Make sure you recognize all of the transactions or items on those bills. And if you don't receive a paper bill when you're supposed to, that's also a red flag, and you need to find out why that didn't get to you. If you're going to do any financial investing, definitely look into people and products before you do so. There is a website there, and you can also check out the Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions. They have a lot of great resources and information on their website about investing. Check your credit reports. As you probably know, it is free now to freeze your credit, which means that you kind of put a lock on it and you have to provide some kind of like password or something like that before you can open a credit card or a loan in your name, which is kind of like a hassle when you want to go to do it, but it prevents scammers from being able to open credit cards in your name without you knowing about it. Of course, you can get your free credit reports from annualcreditreport.com. Recommend getting those as often as you can. Just double check on those. And there is a phone number there as well. And if you're like sitting at your desk or whatever, like frantically trying to write these URLs down, don't worry about it. I have provided my slides as part of the resources, so you can get those hyperlinks there. You're also going to want to protect your PINs and passwords. So, you know, if you are working from home, please don't write your passwords on a sticky note and then stick that sticky note to your computer monitor, because anyone can see that. And really, like when you are in an office situation and you're working in a cubicle, literally anyone walking by could see that information. And the whole point of a password is that it's secret and secure. So we don't want to be doing that. And when you're using PINs and passwords, you're going to want to use a different one for each account that you have. And I say that, and then I will immediately admit after that that I'm guilty of not doing that myself, so I understand it's kind of a hassle, but you should have variety in your passwords, because if a scammer gets a hold of one of your passwords and it's the same across everything, now they have access to everything because they have one password of yours. And Tiffany had a really great phrase in her presentation that I will now be borrowing, which is your password should be long and strong. So you want to use passwords that are complicated and difficult to guess. So you want to use capital letters, lowercase letters, numbers, symbols. And I recommend using something like a passphrase rather than a password. So, you know, maybe for your Netflix account, which I know we all want to dearly protect, you're going to want to maybe use something like capital M movies and then the number 4 and then CJ, which is my initials. So maybe that's my Netflix password, which is harder to guess because it's a combination of words and numbers versus just like password 123. Protect your information online. And again, this is like the only little tidbit I have about this, but Tiffany from the BBB had a lot of great information about this. I will just say, to reiterate, avoid using public Wi-Fi when you're doing financial business. So if you're using a banking app, don't use it on public Wi-Fi. Public Wi-Fi is great for, you know, scrolling Facebook, checking the weather, Googling something real quick. If you're doing something, again, with financial information, or you're logging into your MyChart for your healthcare institution, like, please don't do those on public Wi-Fi. It's just not secure enough. You're going to want to do it on your home Wi-Fi. Or if you need to, you can use your 4G like data system, which is a little better than public Wi-Fi, but really you're going to want to be home when you're doing those kinds of things on a secure network. And if you are having to enter information online, if you look at the URL and it says HTTPS, that means secured versus just HTTP. So that's a good sign. You're going to want to look for that anytime you are entering information online. And just know that even if there is an S, that's not like fail-safe, but it's something that you want to look for. In terms of your snail mail, you want to protect that just as much as you protect your stuff online. So you can opt out of those like pre-screened credit offers, and you can do that at optoutscreen.com. There is also a phone number, and you can kind of control your direct mail stuff through dmachoice.org. And of course, AARP is here for you as well. So I know I talked a little bit earlier about the Fraud Watch Network. We're really focused on kind of education and outreach and prevention versus, organizations like the BBB and the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection who do more mitigation and kind of enforcement. So you can come to us for our website, aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork. We've got articles about various scams. All of the ones I talked about earlier are on there, plus like a boatload more because there are so many scams out there. You can take quizzes to test your knowledge. We have a scam tracking map, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. We have a podcast called The Perfect Scam, which most of you probably know what podcasts are, but I'm used to presenting to a little bit older demographic. So if you don't know what a podcast is, it's kind of like a pre-recorded radio show that you can listen to. It's really great for when you're doing dishes or laundry and you just kind of want to maybe multitask and learn something while you're doing those things. So The Perfect Scam is they talk about different fraud and scam cases, and they kind of go in depth about those and how they work. So there's some really interesting stories there. And we also provide what we call watchdog alerts. So you can get those by email. You can sign up on our website. They're bi-weekly. So every other week you get an email and it'll say something like, it'll be all about charity scams, and it'll kind of run through like, here's how they usually work, and here's what you can do to protect yourself. That's all it is. It's just information that comes right to your inbox. And it's really great to have these coming to you so that you can kind of keep that stuff top of mind. So then if you do find yourself in those situations, you're more prepared because you can be like, oh, right, I just got that email about charity scams. I know what to do. And you can also sign up for those by text. So I just wanted to show you guys kind of what the scam tracking map looks like. This is a screenshot. It's from a while ago now, but you can see those little blue spots are kind of where scams have been reported to us, and then you can click on it to find out more. So an example that I had selected was somebody's mother-in-law in Oshkosh received an unsolicited back brace from Creative Orthotics, which is an online pharmacy scam is what it's listed as there, but it's also probably a Medicare scam, which I unfortunately didn't get to talk about today, but you can read about on our website. So you can read about scams there. You can also report scams to us. I will just say if you are reporting scams to us, like I said, we are not a mediating or enforcement kind of agency. We're really just trying to collect information to inform and empower people. So if you're reporting to us, I really encourage you to report to the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, or the FTC, the BBB. The more places that you can report it, the better. And a lot of those organizations share information, but if you're looking for someone to kind of take action, make sure you're reporting it somewhere so that they can help you as well. So there is if you want to get Fraud Watch Network text alerts directly to your phone, you can text us FWN to 50757 to get those texts, and then you just have to kind of like opt in. And we also have a helpline. So the helpline is manned by amazing trained volunteers, and they are there if you want to call that phone number. They can help you figure out your next steps if you feel like you have been scammed. If you got like a suspicious call and you didn't send them any information or money, you just want to like talk to someone about it, they're happy to be a friendly listening ear. So you can call that helpline, like I said, for information about your next steps. They can direct you to resources, or they can just listen. And then again, our website, aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork. where you can find kind of everything that I've talked about today. And I will also just say a quick reminder that I did provide the resources. Those handouts have a lot of what I talked about today. Plus, there's one that is all about robocalls, which I know a lot of people are anxious to get information about. So with that, I will turn it back over to Kelly.
All right, thank you so much, Courtney. So I want to remind everybody about the question box over on the side here. And so if anybody has specific questions that they'd like to ask, now would be the time to do so. And while we're waiting for people to locate that, we do have kind of a fun question, which I think maybe somebody wanted you to ask privately, but while we have it, somebody really likes your hanging shelves in the back, Courtney, and wants to know where you
Oh,
might have gotten those.
thank you. They are from Menards, actually. So, yes,
It's fun to see everybody's backdrop, doing these online
for sure.
workshops. Could you speak a little bit, as we see if people have specific questions, could you speak a little bit more to the handouts as far as things or some
Yeah,
pointers about robocalls, for instance, since you said that's a popular subject, things we
sure.
should know or think about?
Yeah, so I'll quickly just mention what each handout is. So there is my presentation, which has all of the slides that I went through. There's the Con Artist Playbook, which is going to talk about those strategies we went over that scammers use. And then there's the Watchdog Alert Handbook, which has a lot of common scams and kind of like how they work and tips to avoid them. And then the Guide to Stopping Robocalls is got a lot of information about kind of like where those come from and how you can avoid them. So um, I know one question that we get about robocalls a lot has to do with the do not call list, and people are like, I'm on the do not call list. What the heck? Like, why are people still able to call me? And the thing about the do not call list is it's there for like legitimate businesses. So it's going to cut down on your telemarketing calls from legitimate businesses. Scammers are literally criminals and they don't care about the do not call list. So it's not really going to stop them. If you're using a smartphone, there are a variety of apps that you can download. We don't really like plug one over the other, but you can Google those to find out which one works best for you. And you can also contact your carrier. So that works for cell phones, or like I know some people still have landlines. So you can contact your carrier, and they're supposed to be doing everything they can to like verify and authenticate calls that are coming through to you. So you might just need to call your provider and be like, hey, I'm still getting all of these scam calls. Like, what is up with that? And hopefully they can do something to prevent those as well.
All right, and we do have a question that's come in. Do you have any tips for helping adult children talk to their parents about avoiding scams?
Oh, that is a really great question, and it's very difficult. I know these conversations are like never easy. Um, and one thing that I would say is to come at it completely from like a place of love, and also to kind of um, remind them, I guess, that you're not talking to them about it just because they're older and they're your parents and like you think that they're going to have issues, but just like in terms of, hey, I learned about this and I want to make sure that you're safe too. So just kind of like grounding it in like, I'm worried about me, but I'm also worried about you makes it seem less like I'm worried about you because you're older. So yeah, but it's never easy. And it just goes back to like, we need to be having these conversations with our parents, but also with our peers and with people younger than us, because, like I said, it happens to everyone. So I guess you could also lead the conversation with, "Hey, Courtney from AARP warned me this happens to literally everyone, so I just wanted to clear the air." So,
All right, thank you for that. Regarding mailings that you get from charities, would you suggest that it's best to donate to the charity directly to avoid the middleman, or do you have any other suggestions about donations?
yeah, I actually got a similar question to this earlier, and I would definitely recommend going directly to the charity. So I know that there are some organizations who are kind of like, yeah, we're raising money for like XYZ. And if you're interested in donating to XYZ, definitely go directly to them. Sometimes with those kinds of third party things, like there's fees that get taken out, or they're unscrupulous and they just keep the money themselves. So if you get like mail, email, text message, whatever, and they're like, hey, we're raising money for, say, Second Harvest, like go directly to Second Harvest's website. They allow you to donate online through their website, but they also have like, hey, if you want to mail us a check, here's exactly where you can send it. And then you can mail your check directly to Second Harvest.
All right, thank you. A question here, does AARP screen their advertisements, their ads?
That's also a great question that I wish I had a better answer for, because as someone working in the state, so we have an office in every state, and then we have like a national office. So our national office is kind of in charge of that kind of stuff, and in the states, they purposefully keep like a firewall between us. So I don't know much about like what they do in terms of that. I know that, we've been trying to get information out about how to avoid misinformation. So I would hope in my heart of hearts that they are screening their advertisers. And I will make a note to email my my supervisor to run it up the flagpole, because if we're not, we definitely should be.
All right, thank you. So now is the time if there's any last minute questions. And did you have any last thoughts that you wanted to share with us, Courtney?
I guess just as last thoughts, I know that Tiffany had said something very similar, but just to remain vigilant during this time. And I know, it's really a strange time for everyone. It's a stressful time for a lot of us. Things are always changing, and things are so bizarre, I guess, that I just really encourage you to remain vigilant and to ask questions and just be careful for sure.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you so much, Courtney, for sharing this information with us today. We really appreciate it.